Happy Hanukkah, everyone. And before I begin, I want to thank Rabbi Michal Springer for mentoring me in writing this sermon, and my family for being here, and especially my husband Sam for his unwavering support. So it is Hanukkah, so I thought we might begin with a song. And the song, which I'd like to sing together for those of us who know it, it's in Hebrew, but I'm going to translate it afterwards. So sing along if you're familiar. Banu choshech legaresh beyadeinu or va'ish kol echad hu or katan vechulanu or etan surah choshech halashchor Surah lifnei ha'or, Surah choshech halashchor, Surah lifnei ha'or. Thank you, Daniel, for the hand motions. I appreciate it. So that translates as, we have come to banish the darkness. In our hands are light and flame. Each of us is a small light, but together we are a mighty light. Away, darkness. Move on, blackness, away before the light. We've come to banish the darkness. To me, that's Hanukkah in a nutshell. We've come to banish the darkness. In ancient times, we banished our enemies, and now we banish the darkness of the darkest time of the year by lighting candles each and every night of the holiday. We've come to banish the darkness. But there's a problem, and the problem is that darkness exists. Darkness exists in the world around us, it exists in our lives, it exists even within each of us. Most of us have experienced it at one time or another, whether it's the darkness of a loss, the pain of grief, maybe a career loss or relationship difficulty, an experience of depression or other mental health challenges. We all experience darkness. And that darkness, for those of us who've experienced, we know that it can't be so easily banished. There is no magic candle that will send it fleeing. So what do we do with the darkness? And what do we do with Hanukkah if we can't banish that darkness? So I'd like to explore some of these questions by turning for a moment to Joseph, who's the hero of this week's Parsha and of several surrounding it. And Joseph definitely knew darkness. Joseph knew the darkness of the pit, the deep darkness of the place into which his brothers threw him, stripping him of the coat that symbolized his status as the favorite son, and leaving him alone, naked, before that darkness. And I have a feeling that while he was deep down in that pit, he experienced some darkness inside of himself too. Maybe it was the darkness of anger, feelings of hatred, fantasies of revenge towards his brothers who had harmed him. Maybe it was fear, the fear of his own impending death, perhaps, the fear that he would never see the light of day again, that he would never escape that pit. I can imagine the racing thoughts, the sensations, the tightness in the chest and in the belly that might have accompanied such an experience. That's darkness. But Joseph didn't stay in that pit forever. Joseph moved on with his life. He was sold into slavery, down to Egypt, and continued living. What did he do with that darkness that he now knew was not only around him, but within him? How could he continue with that reality? And I want to take a look at a text from the Sfat Emet, a 19th century Hasidic master that both brings us back to Hanukkah and enables us to explore this question of how to live with darkness in a world in which we can't banish it. The text begins by quoting a pasuk, a verse from Proverbs. The verse, Ner Adonai nishmat adam chofes kol chadrei vaten. The human soul is a flame of God searching out all the belly's chambers. Maybe a familiar verse to some of us. It's used at the moment, a very dark moment, after returning from a cemetery, from burying a loved one. We return home, we light a memorial candle, and we say, "The human soul is a flame of God searching out all the belly's chambers." It's kind of a strange phrase, the belly's chambers. And we know in that moment that the purpose of that candle, that flame that we light in memorial, is not to banish the darkness. That darkness isn't going anywhere. So what is it for? Well, we'll turn to the Sfat Emet, who's talking about Hanukkah, but he's also talking about that memorial candle. And here's what he says. He says, especially at this season, when lights were miraculously lit for Israel, even though they did not have enough oil, so there remains light even now to help us, with the aid of the mitzvah of the Hanukkah candles, to find the hidden light within. Hiding takes place mainly in the dark, and we need the candle's light to seek and to find. So the purpose of the candles is to search out the darkness, to seek and to find a hidden light within. And further along, the Sfat Emet says, this is why it is written, seeking out all the belly's chambers. With the power of inwardness, we can find the hidden light within all our own inner chambers. So what's the candle for? What are we searching? We're searching out our belly's chambers. We're searching out the deep, dark places within us, not for the purpose of banishing that darkness, but for the purpose of finding a hidden spark of divine light within. And that searching and that finding takes place not through an act of banishment, but through an act of exploration, an act of being present, seeing the darkness for what it is, not pushing it away, but somehow just finding that little spark of light that gives us the ability to see within it. That's what the Sfat Emet's talking about in the context of the Hanukkah candles. That's what's happening in that moment of lighting the memorial candle. Not banishing the darkness, but lighting it up just a little bit. But that's not all, the Sfat Emet says. He also says the following. He says, this finding happens by the power of mitzvot that you do with all your strength. For the Sfat Emet, the mitzvot are the candle. The mitzvot are what we use to search out those belly's chambers, those dark places inside of us. And when I encountered that, it was actually a big problem for me, because I realized that I have all kinds of great things that I can say about mitzvot, but I'm not sure that it had occurred to me how mitzvot might be a way of doing that kind of introspective work, looking within ourselves, seeing that darkness. And I've been sitting with that question for a little while right now. And I don't have a complete answer to it, but what I do have is one example of how this might work. And for that example, we need to go back again to Joseph, now at the very end of his life. After his brothers have come down to Egypt, after his father has come down to Egypt, spend a long time there, his father Jacob dies. And Joseph and his brothers go back to the land of Canaan to bury their father in Me'arat HaMachpelah, in the cave in which so many of our patriarchs and matriarchs are buried. They return to the cave, they bury him, and it's time to turn around and go home to Egypt. Before they turn around and go home to Egypt, Joseph takes a detour, according to a midrash in Breshit Rabbah. He takes a detour and he goes to visit the pit into which his brothers threw him so many decades earlier. Why? His brothers had one idea, one theory. They thought he was going to remind himself of the anger that he felt, the rage against them, so he could turn around, come back, and wreak his revenge. Makes a certain amount of sense, though they were, fortunately for them, wrong. In fact, the reason that Joseph returned to the pit was so that he could say a blessing for the miracle that happened to him there. Pretty remarkable thing for the Midrash to say. The blessing that's being referred to, you can find it in your own Sidurim. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'asa li nes b'makom hazeh. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who performed a miracle for me in this place. We have it in our liturgy today for visiting a place in which we experienced a miraculous rescue. But how on earth does Joseph think that he experienced a miraculous rescue at the pit? If I'm remembering, he was thrown in there, almost left to die, and then sold into slavery. That doesn't sound like a miraculous rescue to me. I think there are two possible answers to that question. A simpler one and then one that I find more interesting. But whichever answer we go with, somehow through the mitzvah of saying a blessing, through the mitzvah of making a bracha, Joseph is able to look at this experience of darkness and transform it, find this divine light within it, right? He's able to transform it into an experience of a miracle. So what is the miracle? Well, the simple answer is that he almost died. He was almost left in the pit to die. And he didn't. Okay, so he was sold into slavery, which not such a great thing, but it's also not dying. So in a sense, there is a miraculous rescue there. And if that's all there was to say, if that's the only miracle that Joseph experienced, that would already be a pretty amazing example of a way in which Joseph was able to take this experience of darkness and use the mitzvah of saying a blessing as a candle to search it out and find a new spark of divine light within it. But I think it goes even further than that. I think there's a second miracle. And the second miracle is that somehow Joseph was able to come through that experience of darkness, experience the anger at his brothers that he probably felt, but not turn into that vengeful, hateful person that his brothers feared he had become. Somehow, Joseph was able to come out of that experience decades and decades later, not full of hatred towards his brothers, but full of love and compassion for those very people who had tried to hurt him so much. That's a miracle, maybe even as great as the Hanukkah miracle. And that is definitely an example of using the mitzvah of saying a blessing in the way that the Sfat Emet is talking about, using it as a candle to search out the darkness and find the hidden spark within. So I want to bring us back to Hanukkah, back to the song, "We've come to banish the darkness." I always go like this, I picture myself holding a torch. We've come to banish the darkness. And maybe the song doesn't get it quite right. I don't think the message of Hanukkah is really that we have come to banish the darkness. The image of Hanukkah isn't a candle alone. The image of Hanukkah is a candle framed by a window with the darkness of night behind it. The light and the darkness belong together, and the light stands out all the stronger with the darkness behind it. We need to find ways not to try to banish the darkness that will inevitably exist in the world, in our lives, in us. Not to banish it, but to get comfortable with it. Search it out. Maybe even find a hidden spark of divinity within. So my blessing for us this Hanukkah, this Chag Urim, this Festival of Lights, celebrate the light. That is what Hanukkah is about. Celebrate the light. But don't forget the darkness. We need the darkness. We need to get to know the darkness. Remember that our goal isn't to eliminate that darkness. The purpose of the candles is to illuminate that darkness. Happy Hanukkah. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala ubizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam u'amei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudusha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Al Yisrael ve'al Rabbanan ve'al Talmidehon ve'al kol Talmidehon ve'al kol man doskin b'oraita diva atra hadein v'di b'chol atar ve'atar yehei lehon u'lechon shlama rabba china v'chista v'rachamin v'chayin arichin u'mzona revicha u'furkana min kodam avuhon divishmaya v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim tovim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu v'rachamav yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Thank you.